Kia ora everyone, my name's Tania Tapsell. I'm a Rotorua Lakes councillor, obviously based in Rotorua. So I'm one of the youngest local government politicians we have here in New Zealand. Got elected when I was 21 years old, 23 now if you're wondering, with 1 year left on my term on council. So very nice to meet you all. I actually came to a previous workshop as well, which was the local NZ one. So I know exactly what you're going through right now, and I promise you by the end of it it's going to be so worth it. I guess what my role here today is to just give you a bit of an inside perspective, only a few minutes, so just a brief chat, but an inside perspective I guess on tackling poverty from a youth perspective but within local government. So one of my roles within the local council is actually the youth portfolio, which means that I look after pretty much everything to do with young people that comes into council within the wider Rotorua district. So all sorts of things come into play with that. We've got education, employment and health, and also housing as well. So in terms of poverty in Rotorua, it's actually not a very pretty picture. From the community that I was brought up in, which is Kotu, one of the lowest socioeconomic communities, half of the young people there, aged between, I think it's 15 and 24, are actually on some form of benefit. So it is very low socioeconomic. The housing is not very good standards, and the health is also not very good standards as well. So within Rotorua in general, to give you a bit of a picture, about half of the people living, half of the children and young people living within Rotorua actually come into about 30% of the lowest within the whole of New Zealand. Actually, half of them live within the Rotorua. So that's kind of an idea of the community that I come from. One of the things about poverty as well, and I've kind of just pitched this in here while I've got you guys listening to me, is that you kind of, I hope that through your experience here, you kind of think about what you can do personally for it. I actually came from quite a poverty-stricken family as well, so I understand it from a personal perspective. Just wanted to share that with you because it is something that we, well, not all face, but it is something that a lot of young people do face. But fortunately, it does not a be-all, end-all. So while poverty is something that is reoccurring, and you see that, I mean, it can easily be an intergenerational thing, and the reason for that from my perspective is because of education, housing and health, which I can go on and on about how bad those things are, but I'm actually going to flip that around and say that can actually be the solution. So what I think from my perspective and seeing growing up in that community and having best friends that are in all sorts of situations is that it's actually tertiary and housing that I think could be a solution. And I've spoken to some key policy analysts about that as well, and they believe the same thing. So while it's a recurring thing, which is this poverty is a recurring thing, if you can actually improve the educational outcomes, then we can actually start improving everything else. Very simple economics, you know, you get better education, you can get a better job, you get higher income as well. The second part to that is also the housing. So housing actually, as you can, I mean, you're talking about glass houses, but housing affects so many things, and in particular health. So for example, in Rotorua, our 5-year-olds have the worst oral health in the whole of New Zealand, actually in Rotorua. And there's all sorts of things. We get asthma, we get everything. That is just because our homes are not healthy. And so one of the things that we've done as council, this is sort of how the local government comes in, is that we said, well, actually, what can we do about this? Because these are our communities that have been affected. And so we decided that we're going to do, through a sustainability portfolio, is that we're going to help pretty much subsidise and insulate homes. So we've gone and insulated a few hundred homes within Rotorua. We've combined with iwi and the private sector to make sure that our homes in our lower socioeconomic areas are actually getting fully insulated. And already we are starting to see the health benefits, let alone the health benefits that will come from the next generation to come as well. So that's sort of one of the things that local governments can actually start to do to improve that. One of the things that we discussed recently, and probably also some in your areas, is also adding things like fluoride to the water. So we had a big debate about adding fluoride to the water. And like I said, our 5-year-olds have like the worst oral health in the whole of New Zealand. So that was an important discussion that local government had to say, well, actually, what are the resources that we have and that we manage that we can actually do and use to start providing better outcomes. But probably the only other thing I'd say is when you are trying to look for a solution, you have to look for things that you want to have the big picture and also the small little things. So you want a solution that focuses on the big picture, that says, this is the vision. And having that vision is very important. It's where do we want to be. So our council back in Rotorua, we set the goal that 2030 goals. So basically in 2030, we want things like a healthy community. We want healthy homes. We want higher education outcomes. We want our employment levels to be up. But then, as well as having that big vision, you also need the smaller solutions. So we said by the end of 2016, which is our 3-year term that we're in council, we had much smaller goals, which was just we want to have more sports and recreation activities. We want to provide our facilities and our reserves at a low cost so that people can actually use them and teams can actually come and run tournaments. So it's sort of little things like that. It's focusing on that big vision picture, but also picking out the small things that you want. And I think you can relate that to a whole lot of things as well, because sometimes, and it's all very well to say this is where we want to be in the future, but sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming, can't it? Like you need to bring it all the way back to if that's what we want in 10, 20, 50 years' time, what are we actually going to do by the end of this year? What are we going to do by the end of 5 years? Even what are we going to do by the end of this week? So I guess that would just be my advice to you as well. But I will be around and I'm coming to visit your tables, but I think it's probably the best advice I can give you from a local government perspective. So yeah, thank you.